Good afternoon from rainy Houston, where TCO is underway right now. Welcome to our viewers from near and far. My name is Nate Brocker. I'm a analytics solution manager with Topcoder. I have the pleasure of getting to introduce our guests for this session that we've put together especially for our data science community at Topcoder. It should be an interesting and informative session that we have with AWS, specifically AWS Marketplace. Today, for our data science community members, we'll be talking about listing models with AWS. Why is this something that we want to talk to you about? Why have we prioritized this for a live stream? Well, we think it's a great opportunity actually for our community to take the skills that they've been sharpening through Topcoder in the challenges that you participate in and benefit in new ways from them. We're going to let our guests tell you a bit about why you as a community member might want to consider getting familiar with and building models for AWS Marketplace and how really easy it is to do this. We have with us Kanchan Waikar, a senior solutions architect with AWS, along with Joseph Shih, a marketplace solutions architect at AWS. Thank you both for being here today.
Sure, our pleasure. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. We'll get started actually by letting them explain a bit more about AWS Marketplace and then move after that into a time of Q&A with them. So for all our viewers that are tuning in, feel free to send us your questions online through Twitch and Facebook, and we'll get as many of them as we can at the end here. Without further ado, Kanchan and Joseph, take it away.
Thank you so much. Hi, my name is Kanchan Waikar, and I'm a solutions architect from AWS Marketplace for Machine Learning team. And today, it is really my pleasure to be able to talk to you about how can you monetize machine learning models that you have developed by listing them in AWS Marketplace. And I have Joseph, who would be talking as well. So let me get started. At Amazon, we have been doing machine learning for a really long time. And things such as recommendations engine, paths that optimize robotic picking routes, demand forecasting, capacity planning, these are some of the examples of machine learning as well. Apart from that, we have also been focused on enabling our customers to use third-party products as well. And AWS Marketplace is precisely for that. In AWS Marketplace, we can find, buy, test, and deploy third-party software. It contains an extensive selection of third-party products, including AMI-based solutions, as well as SageMaker-compatible machine learning models and algorithms. And those are the ones that we'll be focusing on. It is extremely easy to deploy products from AWS Marketplace, and the billing of these third-party products deployed from AWS Marketplace is consolidated into your AWS billing. And there are flexible consumption and contract mechanisms available with AWS Marketplace as well. So why should you consider listing your machine learning models in AWS Marketplace? Well, there are multiple reasons behind it. One of the reasons is to actually monetize your machine learning models. Customers are really interested in using the pre-built machine learning models for accelerating their machine learning workloads. And that's where you can come into picture. You can take your machine learning model, you can list it in AWS Marketplace so that AWS customers can discover and deploy them using Amazon SageMaker. The second reason why you should list is to ensure that you are protecting your IP while listing. So by listing your machine learning model in in AWS Marketplace for machine learning, you get to protect your IP. Your customer, they're not going to be able to see what is packaged within your Docker container. And the third reason is to really reach new customers. I mean, you have already solved the problem by creating a machine learning model. Why not reach new customers and let them use it within a secure environment within AWS account? And these are some of the reasons why you would want to list your machine learning models within AWS Marketplace. Next, we'll be diving deep into the process of how can you become an AWS Marketplace seller, how can you package your machine learning model using Docker, and then how do you publish the same in form of a AWS Marketplace listing. And I'll be handing over to Joseph, who would dive deep into the entire process and show us step by step how to go about the same.
Thank you, Kanchan. Hi, so my name is Joseph Shih. I'm with AWS as Solution Architect, and we're just going to go through these 4 modules here. We have 4 modules. The first one will talk about how to sign up as a seller, and then how to package and prepare your models for selling, and then how to create that product in the console and how to submit and test it. So we're going to take you from having a model that's ready to go, a model that you have trained on, and taking it all the way to the selling process. So we'll start with the first module now. To sign up as a seller, it's a very simple process of going to aws.amazon.com/marketplace, and then there's a link at the top of the page where you could click to sell in Marketplace. Once you click that, it should take you to the AWS Marketplace Management Portal. Under the products and machine learning section, if you click that, it'll take you to how to sign up, and it's a very simple process of picking a unique business name, reading the terms and conditions, and clicking the agree button, and now you are a seller. So that was pretty quick. But there's one more step you need to do if you want to sell machine learning models on Amazon, on AWS Marketplace, delivering via the Amazon SageMaker. So you'll need to send a request to the team to get you whitelisted. It'll take about a day or 2 business days, and that'll get you whitelisted and ready to sell. While that's happening, you could go over to the settings page to fill in your public profile. That's where you'll upload your logo. You can also start the process of inputting your tax information. If you want to list free models, then this is not necessary, but if you want to list paid models, you'll want to fill in the tax information to do that. And to sell models, you need to have an entity in either the US or the EU, and you also need to have a bank account in the US. And you can also sign up as a sole proprietor individual to do so. Let's continue on with the actual packaging. So we're going to go a little deep now into how Amazon SageMaker works with your model, how it'll orchestrate that. The Amazon SageMaker is a fully managed service that allows customers to build, train, and then deploy their models. We're going to focus on your models that you've already trained and the models that are ready to go. So we will deploy these models, and there's 2 ways to deploy. One is through real-time inference, where you will send requests to the model, and the model will reply, and the other one is batch, where you do it in batch. So the overall concept of how Amazon SageMaker works is your models are actually inside a Docker container. If you're familiar with Docker containers, it's all your artifacts, all your models should be packaged in Docker containers, and you can add a web server because Amazon SageMaker will pass data via the HTTP protocol to your container, and your container should respond with the prediction back on that request. So if you could package your model, all the logic, all the artifacts into this container, this Docker container, and then you add a web server that can respond to HTTP requests, then you're pretty much it. You're done. That's what it takes to get your model into the marketplace. So some prerequisites before we do this quick walkthrough is you obviously need a model that you own and you can package into a Docker image. And you also need Docker on your development environment, and you also need AWS CLI installed and with the right permissions to work with your AWS account. And earlier we mentioned the whitelisting process. That needs to be done before we can take some of the steps in this walkthrough. So we'll look at building a Docker file. If you're familiar with Docker, the Docker file is like a recipe of how your Docker image will be built. And then we'll install a web server. We'll also put the model inside. We'll use a mock model in our walkthrough and put that inside the Docker container behind the server, inside the model. And then we will create and test our Docker image locally. So we'll start with a Docker file here in the development environment, in the context directory. And we're going to just start building our Docker file. We'll start with the Ubuntu 18.04 image, and we'll build on top of that. The first thing we're going to do is add a web server. In our example here, we're using a Python Flask server. However, you can use whatever server you want and you're familiar with, so you can install Apache on your server instead of Flask. But in our example, we're just going to add some commands to install that Flask onto the image. Now we'll need to create a Flask script. The Flask script will be what's powering the Flask server inside your container. And we'll need to define 2 endpoints. The first endpoint we need to define for Amazon SageMaker to be able to use this container is the ping endpoint. The /ping endpoint should respond with a response code of 200, That's the HTTP response code of 200 to say, hey, this container is ready to do inference. We can start making predictions. The second endpoint that SageMaker will hit is the invocations endpoint. The invocations endpoint is the meat of it. It's where all the inference is going to be happening. So SageMaker will be sending all the input that the customer will want to make predictions on to this endpoint. It's going to be a post request on /invocations, and this is where we want to add our model, where we want to respond with the predictions. So for our demonstration purposes, we're going to use a mock model. We're going to assume we have this string here, and the string is a result of some training that we have. And it's a simple regular expression that looks for 7s and 9s, and we want to go ahead and include this file into our Docker file too. So we'll go ahead and add some lines to our Docker file to include this fake mock string artifact we have. So we'll go back to our server script, and we'll continue defining our invocations endpoint. Here we'll add a line to read in the artifact that we just created, the regular expression. So we'll read in the regular expression file. We'll add in another line to read in what SageMaker will pass to you in the request. So we'll read the input from the post request body, and then we'll compare the two and respond whether it's lucky or not in a JSON format here. We're going to go back to our Docker file and include this web server script. Now we need to write a serve program. When you run your Docker container, you execute a program in the Docker container. So that's very similar how SageMaker will work. SageMaker, when it runs your container, it will execute the serve program. So you want to have a serve program that can get your container ready. So it's a perfect place for us to write a bash script to get the Flask server running. So when your container runs in SageMaker, SageMaker will execute this file, and this file will start the server, the HTTP server that's inside your container. So we'll include this serve file in the path of our image, so make sure that that can be executed. And we're ready to build. So we'll issue the docker command, docker build, on the context that we're in right now, and we'll just tag this Docker image with the tag my inference model here. Once that build is complete, we can run this Docker container inside our development environment. So we'll make sure to publish ports 8080, because that's where SageMaker will be sending those pings and where it will be sending those invocation calls. And then we will make sure the serve is executed. So on the last line there, you see serve is being executed. So that will start our web server. Once it's running and ready, we can start pinging it. So we'll use curl to curl the development environment itself, where the container is already actively listening to 8080. And we should get a 200 response code here, and we do. And then if you curl the post requests to the invocations endpoint, you should get back what you were expecting, and we will pass in hello world 7 here as a test string to see if we get what we expected back, and we do. Since we're ready to go, we can go and stop that container. So the next step is to create the product. So a product in the Amazon SageMaker, we call it a model package. A model package contains an image, the image of your model, and also any artifacts that's needed. In our case, our artifacts are embedded inside the model, so we're just going to make a model package based off of our image. The process of creating a model package requires that you take the image and you upload it to Amazon ECR, Amazon Elastic Container Registry, and that's a fully managed Docker container, a fully managed Docker registry, and you can upload that directly using Docker, and once your image is there, we can upload some test data into S3, Amazon S3, and we store some test data. After we validate the model with the test data and we do some scanning, you can have your model package ready to go and list it. So we're going to just go through some of the steps in this process here. So we'll start noting that it's important that we have our entire environment in US East. Make sure that your console is US East, that you're uploading to US East 2, US East 2, that's the Ohio region. Thank you, Kanchan. So here, we'll run a command This will log your development environment Docker instance into Amazon ECR in US East 2. Once you're logged in, we're going to create a repository in Amazon ECR. In Amazon ECR, we're going to create a repository called My Inference Model, the same name we gave to the image. Once we create it, we also need to have the full name of the ECR location. So that consists of your account name. We have a fake account name here. Account ID 0123456789. And then we have the region, and we also have the name of the repository. So that consists, that's what consists when we talk about the full name. And we'll need to tag our image that we just created with that full name so that we can just do a Docker push command, which will push that image, upload that image to that ECR location that we just created. Next, we're going to have to create some test data. So to create the model package, again, we need to create some test data so we could validate that it's running successfully. So here we will create 2 test files. We'll also create a S3 bucket to upload it to, and then we'll go and upload it with a few commands with the AWS CLI. Now we're going to shift gears and go into the browser and look at how we can finish the steps in the console, the Amazon SageMaker console. So again, we want to make sure we're in the Ohio region, which is US East 2. And we'll head over to the SageMaker console. The Amazon SageMaker console, you want to go to the model packages, because we're creating our model packages. We'll specify a name for the model package. And this is also where we will reference that full name, your account ID, the region, and also the name of the repository that we uploaded that image just moments ago to. So once you have that, we don't have any other artifacts. We'll go ahead and just specify which instance type it's compatible. On the next page, we'll make sure we keep publish option as yes, and that will make sure we validate this model. And this is where we'll need an IAM role. An IAM role is a role that the SageMaker will use to access the data we uploaded to the test buckets. So in the validation profile, we just have to edit the JSON a little bit. So specify where the input data is, where the test data we uploaded to, so the bucket name. We also want to specify where the output should be going to, and then the formats that we are expecting. We'll create the model package. Once it's created, it'll go into an in-progress status, and in this step, it will take your data and try to pass the data to your container image inside SageMaker and see if you can pull out the response and then put it back into S3. And when it's done, you'll get a completed status and where you can now go to S3 and look at the output. The next step is to submit your listing to AWS Marketplace. And what we're going to do next is we're going to submit that listing, and then we're going to subscribe to our own listing, and then we're going to sign off and publish. To submit your listing, once your model package is complete, you can select it, and in the drop-down menu, publish new ML Marketplace listing, and go ahead and select that. That should take you to the AWS Marketplace management portal. In the management portal, you will need to fill in your product description. You'll need to fill in any usage instructions you have. We have a set of best practices that are available to ensure that customers have what they need, such as what's the input format that your model is expecting, what's the output format that they should be expecting back. So those best practices are available online, and we can make that available also after this.
Stage.
So when you're done, you'll want to submit your listing.
To the floor.
Once you submit your listing, you can follow the progress of your publishing in the management portal. When it gets to the phase of test product, you can now see your test product in the AWS Marketplace. Only your account will be able to see it. It's published in a limited listing state.
All right.
And so we're going to go ahead and click Go to Stage Products.
Other matchups for Rux.
And we're going to continue to subscribe to our own listing. Because what we want to do is actually subscribe to that model package in the marketplace so that we can test if everything
Next up,
works.
we have I Am Infinite versus Con Lin.
Great. So we're going to test
Next
our
up, we
stage
have Robbie
product now.
June versus Universo.
So we're going to go back to SageMaker
We
after
then
we
have
subscribe,
Yoki
and
versus
we're going to create
LOI.
models. We need a model to be created
Finally, we
from
have
our
I Am
subscription.
Tom
our
versus
subscribe model
Arianto
package.
Oko versus
And
We got
then
some live competition
Jack
going on behind
Mania.
us, so apologies for the additional commentary
Good
in the
luck,
background.
competitors.
All
We'll
right.
just give them a second to. Yeah, sounds like they wrapped up.
Okay,
Carry
great.
on.
Thank you. So we'll need to create a model based off of the subscription we just subscribed to, our own product that it's in the limited state. So we'll go to models and create a model, and we'll specify a name for the model, and then we will need to choose the model package from the AWS Marketplace that we published in the limited state. We'll select the model package from that stage product and click create. With this model, we can now deploy our model in two different ways. The first way, earlier I mentioned, was batch, and the second way is a real time where you stand up this endpoint that will continue to be ready to make predictions on. So the first test we're going to do is a batch. So we'll go to batch transform job and create a batch job. We'll need to specify a job name, and then we'll select the model that we just created. We want to select the instance type that we want to use. If you want to scale up, you can change the instance type to something bigger. You can also scale out by increasing your instance count. And the SageMaker will take care of orchestrating all those containers. You don't have to worry about load balancing, splitting the jobs. SageMaker will take care of all of that for you. Again, just like the validation, we want to specify where the data is. So if you have a bunch of data, make sure it's in a bucket somewhere, and then here you want to specify where that bucket is, the path to those files, and then you want to specify the output where you want the results to go. Once that's done, you can hit create job, and when the progress status changes from in progress to complete, that means your job should have completed all the data input that you had. And if you go to S3 where you specify the output, you should be able to find your results there in the S3 bucket. Now we're going to test the endpoints. The endpoints, again, is an API that you can stand up, and you can reach your endpoint over the internet using HTTP. It's a REST API. So we're going to create an endpoint now. Here we're going to give it a name and also create a new endpoint configuration. In the endpoint configuration, we want to select the model moments ago we created based off the model package that we subscribed to. We'll add the model, and then we can click edit to here, again, change the instance type if you want to scale up, or increase the instance count if you want to scale out. There's also an option to enable elastic inference. Elastic inference allows you to take advantage of GPUs to accelerate your models. That's only if your model supports that. So you can optionally enable that. We're just going to create an endpoint configuration and also create our endpoint. And once our endpoint goes from creating to end service, we are ready to make calls on it from anywhere. So in our example, we will use AWS CLI from our development environment where we were using to build it, and we'll just run a command, invoke endpoint command with the AWS CLI. You can do this yourself with a simple HTTP call. However, you will need to sign your requests using AWS Signature 4 to make sure it's authenticated requests. So, but here we're just going to use the CLI, and we're going to simply say the endpoint name is the endpoint name we specified, the input file and the output file, and what we get back is what we expected. Now we're ready to publish, and the only step you have to do now is go back to the portal, click that big orange button, sign off and publish, and then in a few days, that should go ahead and be live in the marketplace. To close up, I'd like to point out a few key points that are important to the AWS marketplace when it comes to Amazon SageMaker products. Your model that you've developed, that you've trained, are your intellectual property and are protected. How that works is your container is never accessible by the customer itself. When the customer subscribes, they are only accessing your model through SageMaker. So SageMaker will handle all the orchestration. They don't have direct access to your IP. Your customer will also be getting the bill on their AWS bill, so that's a benefit for them to consolidate that. You'll get reporting in the management portal, and then we also provide go-to-market resources to help you. And there's also the capability of setting up private offers if you have relationships with a customer that you want to give them a special offer for. And with that, if you have questions, please message in.
Send them in.
Send them in.
Please.
And then to get started, all you have to do is go to aws.amazon.com/marketplace and click that link at the top to sell your listings.
Great. Thank you so much, Kanchan and Joseph. I really just in listening to this, hearing the similarities of process between what you as community members do all the time when you submit to Top Coder challenges to what it takes to put a model to list it on AWS Marketplace. There are clearly some similarities from how you build and train models to how you Dockerize it and submit it. So we hope that some of that resonates with you, and that you might consider giving this a look as another opportunity, a way to monetize the work that you've been doing. Just had a few questions for you guys as I'm thinking through this. If I'm an existing Top Coder community member who, say, has a few models that I've already built, is there a limit to the types of models that I can submit? Say, for example, if I have a distributed algorithm, is that something I can just put up on AWS Marketplace and it'll run just fine?
Definitely, yeah. Distributed algorithms are supported by AWS Marketplace as well, and I would also recommend you to enable checkpointing to ensure that the customers can also benefit from the managed spot pricing, because that can also be utilized with AWS Marketplace algorithms.
You bring up pricing. Is pricing entirely set by the person listing their model on the site, or is it sort of any kind of guidance or recommendations from AWS in that process?
Absolutely. So the pricing is actually set by you. So if you're listing a model, you would decide what kind of pricing you want to apply. And to even extend that further, there are certain situations where you might want to provide that model to a specific customer, let's say an enterprise customer, for a longer duration for a specific contract. And that's where private offers come into picture as well. So by listing your model in AWS Marketplace, you also get that additional way for enabling private offers for specific enterprise customers.
Great. One of the scenarios that I could picture for a Top Coder community member who wants to list their model with AWS is maybe they've posted the model and they've had a few people who have decided to buy it. If I wanted to kind of learn from how the customer is using my model and maybe see kind of how the model runs with their data, is there any kind of way to do that? Are there limitations in that sense?
Yeah, so there are limitations there. So the goal here from our AWS customer point of view is to ensure that their data remains secure.
Yeah.
Which is why whenever any third-party container from AWS Marketplace gets launched, it gets launched in a network isolated environment, which means it has no internet access, which literally means that the sellers or the person who is listing their model in AWS Marketplace, they cannot learn anything from customers' data.
Great. We had a session earlier, a master class that was kind of customer facing, where we talked about how customers can take the models that they find on AWS and sort of form ensembles. They can call on multiple of them and kind of process the data so they get the ideal results from that.
Yeah, that's a great point here as well, right? Not all of the, not everybody has got a great data science team which can solve every problem, and even if they do, they probably don't have the data which is required for solving that particular problem, which is why it is crucial for us to help them by listing these machine learning models in AWS Marketplace, so that they can use these machine learning models for solving their big picture problems using ensemble models within their applications.
If I'm listing a model on AWS for sale, is there a limit to can I form ensemble models myself and list those?
Well, it's really up to you how you want to create that Docker container. If that Docker container needs to use multiple models, it needs to embed all of that inside the Docker image, and that's what you list.
So no external APIs that I can call on with my model?
No.
For that? Okay.
So your boundary is literally limited to the Docker image.
Got it.
And it has no internet access. So whatever, even the libraries that you need or the serialized model weights, they all need to be part of the Docker image.
Got it. So speaking of Docker images, are there any limits to the types of models that you can support within Docker images on AWS?
So whatever you can package within Docker image.
Anything goes within a Docker
Yep.
container. Cool. Very good. Can you talk a bit about the maybe the verticalized or horizontalized areas that people build models in? Where are you seeing a lot of models being built?
Sure. So it really depends upon the consumer, right? So we have so many industries which are looking for solutions. There is oil and gas industry, there is a manufacturing industry, there is construction industry, and there are also these domains, right? Like or even verticals such as computer vision. There are so many problems in computer vision which are still needs to be solved, right? So if you are able to solve those problems, if you are able to create a model for solving those problems, customers are definitely going to benefit from it.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, so we know our community is incredibly creative, very ingenious in finding ways to solve problems. So I encourage you guys to take a look at the models that are currently listed on AWS, come up with ideas of areas where there's maybe a space that you think there's value that you can provide and add, and consider adding your models there. Thank you all for just this excellent session that you're able to give to us. Top Coder is working really closely with AWS these days, and we thought that this would be a great way to just add value to the work that you're already doing, where you can consider listing models in a very similar fashion to what you're doing with Top Coder with AWS. So thank you both so much. Really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming out here today.
Thank you, and it's our pleasure to be part of the Top Coder 2019 here. Thank you.
Fantastic. All right, that's all from us today. Signing off from rainy Houston. You all have a good day.